Hi there, this is Huskins from the Forex Trading Professionals. Today I'm going to share with you how interest rates from the central banks of a particular country affect the valuation or the perceived valuation of a particular currency, and we'd see what is the general perception and then what actually happens. On the onset, let me tell you that the internet is full of gas that is generally accepted shit. The same shit gets passed on from one website to the other, and perhaps the participants start believing in whatever information which is fed to them to be absolutely true without investigating that further. So be prepared to change your mind, change the way the general perception of interest rates and their effect on that particular country's currency. This is what's generally accepted. It's generally accepted that the higher the interest rate of that central bank of that particular country, the higher would be the valuation of that currency. Reason is simple: you hold that currency and you get interest rate credited in your account. For example, currently Australia is supposed to have the highest interest rate, 4.5%. Let's say if you were to hold a Aussie JPY position, you would get paid interest rate or to get paid a rollover for holding onto that position. And that is a general accepted principle. That's why generally whenever we see the interest rates rise, the first knee-jerk reaction is that the valuation of that particular currency rises. But for the long term, is that the case? The world can be divided into maybe two time periods. One is pre-Lehman Brothers collapse and post-Lehman Brothers collapse. This is in around September 2008. When the sky was falling and there was panic or risk aversion going on in the market, the central banks, they had a meeting, and in the meeting they decided to pump in a lot of liquidity to override the problems, and they lowered the reserve rate for all the currency, or all the central banks reserve their central interest rate considerably. But before that, we had the New Zealand Central Bank at 8.5% interest rate, which was the highest. Now, if you look at the general accepted principle that a higher interest rate would mean that the highest valuation of that particular currency, then keeping that in mind, the New Zealand dollar should have been the most expensive currency. But that wasn't the case. Even in its own sector, which is the commodity sector, the Canadian dollar over a period of 2 years, 3 years preceding 2008 September far outweighed the New Zealand dollar. Australian dollar was more valuable than the New Zealand dollar. Look at the euro and the USD pre-Lehman Brothers collapse. The US dollar, or the Reserve Bank from USA, the Federal Reserve, had a interest rate higher than the ECB had. But what was the direction of the Euro USD before 2008? Up. So just the fact that you have a higher interest rate is counterintuitive. You perhaps the valuation of that particular currency over a longer period of time depreciates instead of appreciating, which is the general accepted principle. Want to investigate that further? Let's see what happened after the Lehman Brothers collapse, when risk aversion got into the market. Japan with the lowest interest rate, and the US dollar, USA with the second lowest interest rate, are the most sought after currencies. The value of those currencies till this date, today of September 2010, increased the most. So with a low interest rate, you yet have the valuation of that currency going up. In short, as forex traders, this is how we trade the interest rate. The knee-jerk reaction is always to bid up the country's currency whose interest rate is on the rise, but the real direction of that country's currency is based more on fundamental and technical reasons rather than basic interest rate differentials. That's